Hey, what's up, PUF? It's me, PUM, and this is a side story about what happens during the Youth Division matches of the 25th World Tournament in this timeline. On the morning of the tournament, two young Saiyan hybrids are awoken at the crack of dawn for light sparring and practice with their fathers. These two children are Trunks and Buri, and their fathers, Tien and Vegeta. Tien had always stressed proper technique and control during Buri's training, so she is usually trying to maintain a calm and measured state of being. But Buri is still a little girl, and quite often her energy causes her to break through that facade. This is partly due to being so young, and partly due to her mother's fiery alternate personality. Tien's focus on technique was due to the myriad of abilities that Buri's third eye allowed her. Tien's full power had been lost due to his time as an assassin, clouding his heart in darkness. But with Buri still being pure-hearted, this entire time it has allowed her to discover more than he ever could, and he is very, very proud of her. That said, this has caused him to push her a little harder than he really should, but I think Buri really appreciates it nonetheless, because she does want to be strong. The two finish their light morning sparring match, and Tien calmly says that he is very proud of Buri's progress, which causes her to cheer. Tien chides her, and she apologizes, but he chuckles lightly and rubs her head, before the two go to eat breakfast before the tournament. Buri just couldn't control her excitement. She was just way too ready to get to fighting, because the one she wanted to defeat out of anybody was Trunks. She was always very offended at his father's views of her friends, and her family, so today was the day that she proved that they were all equals. She wants to come out on top and prove to Vegeta that it doesn't matter if you had always been a Saiyan or just become one. A Saiyan is a Saiyan, and they're all powerful. Over at Capsule Corp, Vegeta was making sure that Trunks' raw power and battle instincts were as sharp as ever. Trunks' natural laziness usually made this a hassle for the prince, but today both of them were highly motivated. Vegeta's hope for today was to see Trunks trounce all his opponents, including what he deemed as the fake Saiyans and their offspring. Then Vegeta wanted to show Kakarot who the true top dog was, since he was returned to Earth today. And finally, he wanted to defeat Trunks in the finals to keep him hungry for more power and to maintain a strong drive for his training. Remember, they do not know about the Junior Division right now. Trunks really just wants to defeat Goten while going all out, and maybe show off for Kurisu. Unable to sift through his feelings, Trunks doesn't realize this is actually a crush, but knows not to bring it up to his dad at the very least. Hours later, over at Kami House, Krillin and 18 are going over a few more basic moves and how to fight for their daughter. As they do this, 17 makes snide remarks and tries to teach his niece more flashy and crazy combat moves. This usually gets him chewed out by his sister, but 17 only laughs at it. Marion was extremely new to fighting, and with the small amount of time her parents had to teach her, the girl's techniques were severely lacking. Not to mention, when 17 made his suggestions, she would actually listen to him, as if she'd been learning from him for a long time. As much as 18 and Krillin didn't want to admit it, they didn't think Marion would go too far fighting against any of their friends, though for some odd reason 17 just kept laughing at them. And at home, somewhere in Satan City, Kurisu woke up and did her usual morning routine. She wasn't a fighter, but her parents loved training in their bedroom in the morning. This routine, strangely enough, included checking on the Junior Division fighters that she had become the manager of, for a cut of their winnings. You see, Kurisu really liked nice things. Her father made good money as one of Mr. Satan's employees, and quite honestly, he spoiled her and her mother, but the more money she had for herself, the more she spoiled herself as well. Once she had heard that Goten and the others would be competing this time, her usual greed had caused her to seek out the usual betting pools for the tournaments. She decided to bet everything that she had earned on Goten being the winner. When she hung out with him, Buri, and Marin, Buri would usually try to spar with him, where Goten would usually win by just using a bunch of crazy techniques. Goten, in her very narrow view, was probably the strongest of the next generation, and she also had a very small crush on him. There was something about how simple and innocent he really was that caught her eye. She had also had a few conversations with Chi-Chi, who really enjoyed the little girl. This is mostly because Chi-Chi can tell that Kurisu is a very shrewd businesswoman, which means that Goten would always be fine in the monetary department. And it was that very shrewdness that made her the intelligent businesswoman she was. And so she had bet on all her friends, except for Marin. She just wasn't expecting her to win, but if Buri were to win, or maybe Trunks, then she could still get a very large sum of money. Over on Mount Paozu, Goten had overslept and missed out on morning spars with Gohan. Today was a super important day since he'd finally meet his dad and finally get to fight his friends all out. But he was just so forgetful sometimes. Later on, the entire group of Z-Fighters meet up, and everyone but Kurisu, who had already known, learn about the Junior Division. and Buri and Trunks are kinda embarrassed that their dads are arguing so openly in front of everybody. Skipping ahead, in the first round, Goten, Trunks, Marin, and Buri fight random opponents and win really easily. In the second round, it came down to Goten versus Marin and Trunks versus Buri, the exact fight that Buri had wanted this entire time. In their battle, Goten's usual wild and erratic fighting style was directly countered by Marin's employing her own strange and eccentric moves. Krillin had to admit to his brother-in-law that his ideas were a good counter to Goten's fighting style, but the sly uncle just snickers at this. Growing sick of the back and forth, Goten charges at Marin, who announces that this special move that her uncle had taught her would be the final move of the match. She begins to spin and twirl while using 17's Super Electric Strike. This surrounds her in bright green energy. Goten is amazed and stops with stars in his eyes, yelling at that was so cool. He begins to try and imitate her by spinning himself, but as he does this, a sinister glint appears in Marin's eye. She stops on a dime, and while doing so, a super powerful green energy wave blew towards Goten and then flung him out of the ring and onto the ground. Just about everyone is shocked, and Kurusu, while proud of her friend, is nearly having a tantrum that she had lost all that money on Goten, and that her crush had been defeated at all. Meanwhile, Marin goes back to her usual cheerful self. Trunks is also pretty angry since he couldn't battle Goten, while Vegeta is mocking Kakarot that his son got defeated by a novice, and you can hear all this over the crowd. Goku takes the mocking in stride, and with a big proud smile, nods to Goten. Hopefully this loss would keep Goten motivated to train. Meanwhile, the kid rubbed his head and ran back into the ring to hug and congratulate his friend. He was proud of her, and he wanted to learn that move. The next match is Trunks versus Buri, and when he faces off against her, he isn't dumb, and knows even though his dad looks down on Buri and the others, they are not weak by any means. The battle starts off, and Trunks rushes Buri, who remains in her controlled and technique-driven state. It was clear that as a martial artist, Buri is definitely more skilled, but Trunks was way stronger, to an extent where it almost did not matter. Buri begins to expertly dodge and weave around Trunks' punches and kicks, but the smug boy laughs that he'd been holding back this entire time, and that he's stopped now. His speed almost doubles, and Buri is forced to start blocking his blows. Finally, Trunks catches a counterpunch from Buri and then another. She is completely disarmed, and Trunks is about to push her out of the ring, but her three-eyed powers take effect. The Three Witches technique is activated, though the creepy thing about it is that the two extra arms that she grew look like they belong to a huge man, not a little girl. Buri then grabs Trunks by the head with her extra arms and flips over him before throwing him with all her might. Trunks rights himself before he even falls at the ring and rushes back at her, where Buri retreats her arms and uses her father's solar flare technique. Caught off guard, Trunks is now unable to see, and Buri activates the telekinesis that her Uncle Chaozu had showed her, and she tries to push Trunks down onto the ground and out of the ring. But the boy flashes into Super Saiyan, and is able to break the hold and jump back onto the stage while panting. Buri chides him that they weren't supposed to go into Super Saiyan, and Trunks blushes and tries to make an excuse. In the stands, Goku remarks at how well Buri had been trained. She wasn't really lacking in raw strength, just favored control over it. Tien confirms that theory and mentions that her mother and Buri shared a very similar affliction, and once again, Vegeta makes a snide remark, causing the two Tiger dads to once again argue for the umpteenth time. Trunks huffs and powers down to base form, and Buri giggles that he's cute when he's angry. Caught off guard and not wanting his dad to get mad at him for this, Trunks yells at her that he doesn't want to hear that from a three-eyed freak. With her feelings genuinely hurt, Buri goes stock still, and finally roars out in rage as she becomes a Super Saiyan. Now, her personality was totally flipped. All that energy she usually kept bottled up was out. Trunks powers right back up to Super Saiyan himself. Now it was clear that Buri had let all her technique fly out the window, but her rage had given her a big boost. The two clash again, and Trunks blocks a flurry of attacks and finally grabs onto her. He rolls with her force and finally flings her out of the ring. She was just about to try and stop her fall and fly back in, but Trunks anticipates this and appears above her. He chops her in the back of the neck and she falls out of Super Saiyan and, more importantly, onto the ground. As the match is called, Buri tries her hardest not to cry, but the tears and sniffles escape little by little, and Trunks can't help but feel really bad about this, but he didn't want to disappoint his dad. Tien sighs that she'd have to get that under control, while Vegeta laughs triumphantly. It was time for the final match, and for Trunks and Marin to face off. At this point, everyone's preparing for Marin to lose easily. Even Trunks is very disappointed with how things have gone, and he's also still feeling very bad about his match with Buri. That is until the match actually starts. Marin's speed is much higher than anyone had really realized, and so she was in front of Trunks and easily swept his legs off from under him. He tries to back up and flip back to his feet, but Marin is behind him and lands a kick to his back. In the stands, Vegeta is flabbergasted. How is this low-class fake Saiyan spawn outpacing his prodigy? 17 then snarks and explains that Marin used to chase him around Kame House when he'd babysit her. Because he could never get tired, he could do this endlessly. While she didn't have infinite energy, Marin did have her mother's spirit, meaning she didn't like to lose. From a very young age, Marin had always had extreme levels of endurance and speed. Marin's current demeanor reminded everyone so much of how calm and cool 18 could usually be, and it was a far cry from how Marin usually acted. Using her immense speed, and the afterimage of all things, definitely taught by her dad, Marin confuses Trunks before appearing behind him. Once again using one of her uncle's techniques, she forms a green energy field around Trunks, trapping him. Switching right back to her usual happy-go-lucky self, she says bye-bye to Trunks and pushes the field far out of the arena, even outside the city limits. Trunks does hit the ground at some point, and the Junior Division champ is named. Tien is very happy, even though Buri didn't win. He turns to Vegeta and explains that Trunks is a very powerful and talented kid, but with Vegeta keeping him cooped up, his mind is narrow. He fights with raw power, and that's about it. But with Marin and Buri, both seem to have some things that they were especially good at, and training with Goten had done wonders for Buri. Maybe if Vegeta had stopped looking down on everyone, these matches may have turned out way differently. Surprisingly, Bulma chirps up that she agrees with Tien, causing Vegeta to fume. He says they're all fools and broods in the stands. Marin would go on to defeat Mr. Satan in a very comical and similar way to how Trunks does, and Trunks after the embarrassing defeat was way more angry at his father than anything else. He had sorta gets what Tien had already explained to Vegeta, not to mention he felt really bad for what he had said and did to Buri, and was going to stand up to his dad when the tournament was over and tell him that he was going to be friends with the girls. These events would also play into the anger and dark emotions of Vegeta and Tien, but that's a story you already know. And that, Plus Ultra fans, where I'll be leaving the story off for right now. Hope you guys enjoyed the Junior Division arc, because with how Toriyama treats Goten and Trunks and Super, I believe this will be the last arc where the next generation is super prominent. When I write Dragon Ball What Ifs, I usually try and write them in the spirit of Toriyama, so if he doesn't do it, I usually won't do it. But if you guys would like to see more of Trunks, Goten, Buri, Kurusu, and Marin later in the story, then definitely let me know down in the comment section below, and I guess I will put a poll up as well. Please go and follow me on Twitter. People actually heard about this video coming out there first. Join the Discord server if you want to interact with the community, or if you want to debate me on one of my what ifs, that's perfectly fine. Both are linked in the description. Please like, comment, and subscribe, as well as hit the notification bell, because trust me, YouTube does not like smaller channels. And an absolutely huge shout out to the patrons, Love McQuaid, Treb, Knuckles OX, Pizza 15X, and Robert Smith. These guys go beyond Plus Ultra in supporting the channel every single day, and I love them so much for it. Finally, be sure to take care of yourselves and always go beyond Plus Ultra. See you guys next time.